And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Lakers Insider for Lakers Daily, joined by Aaron Larsoul, Lakers Insider of the People. That's how I'm going to start saying.
Except was that yesterday? I think it was yesterday. You had the shorter episode with Jovan, and see, I don't like that because Jovan. I think I came up with this, but Jovan is in fact the People's champ, so I cannot be the People's Insider. Jovan must be the People's Insider.
Well, no,
Insider for the Athletic and the People.
He's in, yeah. Well, but like he can't be both.
Yes, he can. He is. He's the People's champ.
He's
everybody's favorite.
Paid by the Athletic. He's paid by the Athletic. You are.
True. I'm not paid by the People.
It's fair. That's fair. You are Lakers Insider for the Lakers. How about
that? That's sure. We'll go with that.
Today on the show, we're going to be talking about JJ Redick. And this conversation, I think, generally speaking, I think people are speaking a little too definitively about who is definitely a better candidate than who isn't, and all of that stuff. I think I have found the conversation surrounding this a little annoying, so we're going to talk about that, but more specifically about the lack of coaching experience JJ has at any level, right? Not even head coaching, assistant coaching. He's done film study, but that's different from a coaching perspective than as a player and as an analyst. So we're going to be talking about that. That is going to lead into the conversation about JJ compared to some of the other candidates who are being rumored, and some of their experience and their coaching experience compared to JJ's, and the comfort that goes along with that. And then if we have time,
oh boy.
I need to get some stuff off my chest with Rudy Gobert, or about Rudy Gobert.
Let's get to it then. Let's get to it. Because I want to hear this, so we need to have time.
Anytime I tweet about Gobert, I wind up having to mute my tweet because Gobert stands are like getting up there with Jeremy Lin stands.
Is this the time?
Russell Westbrook fans.
Is this the time to admit that? Please do not say who it is, because that would have. Because I can't talk about these things specifically. So my opinion on these things specifically, we can't have in public. But are you ready to admit that you sent me the single worst trade machine trade last night that you have ever sent me? Are you ready to admit this?
That's probably the worst one. Yeah, it is like the fact that both teams would be angry at each other for like the proposition.
The single worst one that you have ever sent me, and that is saying something.
I gotta find it now. All right, I'll find that.
You'll find what?
Talking. Huh?
You'll find what?
The screen grab that I sent.
I have it right here. I will read I will read our back and forth on it. What I will
it's a
not
long
do,
back and forth. We're not going to read the whole back and forth.
No. What I will not do is reveal the teams or the trade. Sorry. So you sent me the.
No. I got it. I got it.
All right.
But we're not starting there though. We're not starting there.
All
We don't have an infinite amount of time as we normally do. We have some topics that we have to get to, and we have to be somewhat professional here, and I have to make sure that the right trade is loaded onto the thing. I don't even know if it is.
You cannot post this.
Huh?
You cannot post this.
I can too.
No, but then you can't have my reaction to it.
Well, you could. We already have it.
No. Yes, I understand that, but no, you can't post this. You cannot post this trade.
All right,
it might literally be my last time on the show if you post it.
All right, I won't post a trade, but it did piss you off, and it did, anyway. But no, we got to talk about the coaches.
All right,
because that's the only like newsy thing that there is to talk about. Unless you're ESPN and you could just talk about the Lakers every day, even though the Lakers haven't been in the playoffs now for almost a full round. I saw today. I tweeted out a screen grab of a debate: are the Lakers or Celtics the best organization or the best franchise in the NBA?
Yeah, I don't know why that bothered you so much. I mean, it's who cares? But I saw one worse today, which was, I hope this was real.
Stephen A. scoring on LeBron.
Stephen A. Was that real?
Well, the fact that they both are real. Like, here's my thing.
Could he score 1 point on LeBron? If they played to 100 and you spotted Stephen A. 99, could he win? I mean, the answer is no. If LeBron cared at all, the answer is no.
he would find a way to score negative points. I've seen Stephen A's jumper. That dude, like that thing is broke. Like that thing, I've seen, and I'm the guy who missed the layup or whatever. But like I know what a good jump shot looks like, and that is not one of them.
Yeah, you're the
It's
shot doctor. You're the Lakers Twitter shot doctor,
it's like
self-proclaimed.
it's slightly better than Amin Al Hassan's, but like not by much. Not
No,
by
it's
much.
not better than Amin's, by the way.
But yeah, let's talk about the coaches and we'll start general and then we'll get specifically. We'll get more specific as the conversation goes along.
Okay.
Or as specific as you can get. Although no, the Lakers have permission. They got permission reportedly to interview a bunch of head coaches. So I think that means that you're allowed to talk about.
I am allowed to speak about them in generalities, but at the risk of revealing anything in the organization's hand, I will be sort of vague. But yes, I can speak about the coaches.
Yeah.
By name. Yeah.
But like just from the get-go, though, just at the top, how important is coaching experience to you here? Because this is a rare situation where you have somebody who has zero experience whatsoever entering, I think, the most most volatile position in the sport, right? Coaching LeBron James
Most
for
high
the
profile,
Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
This would be a really, really difficult situation that even like Frank Vogel was he had been to the conference finals before. He was a very highly regarded head coach before the Lakers hired him. He lasted 2 years. Darvin Ham had been an assistant coach for basically 50 years and interviewed 137 times and hadn't gotten a job.
Frank last 3 years?
Okay, 3 years. Okay. But Darvin Ham was, a highly regarded assistant coach and had plenty of experience there and lasted 2 years.
Luke was around for a while.
Probably shouldn't have lasted, longer than
Luke was around for a while.
But I'm curious though, like to you, not to the Lakers, to be absolutely clear, but to you, how important is coaching experience at the NBA level in any way whatsoever?
So here's my sigh.
Level.
I just sighed deeply. I don't know if you could hear this on YouTube or on Twitter or on the pod when you listen to this a little bit later. And the reason I sighed is because I don't think you're going to like my answer. And I think you're going to think my answer is a cop-out. And I will hope to explain to you why it's not, or at least I don't think of it that way. And my answer is it's really important unless it isn't. And the reason I say that, the reason I say that is it usually is, I mean, it's helpful, sure.
In all other industries.
Well, yeah, but so there's a bunch of questions here. Yes, it is usually helpful. But if I have to pick between talent and experience, I'd rather have talent. Now you could say that there's no way of knowing
how do you know
how talented, right? But yeah. I mean, but there are some proxies, I guess you could say, for yes. One question is how much does playing experience serve as a replacement? In what ways can it serve as a replacement for experience? I would argue that there isn't really, like, assistant coaching isn't really equivalent experience for head coaching. They're very different. You're obviously going to pick things up from as an assistant from whichever head coaches you work under, and you're going to come up with your own way of how you would do things. But there is nothing like being a head coach in the NBA. So one question is how much can playing experience, especially a lot of playing experience, substitute for coaching experience? And the other question is how talented is the person in question? How smart they are, how charismatic they are, how they're going to be as a leader, what kind of person they are. Do you agree with their basketball philosophy? Those kind of things. Because I am very publicly critical of him, but most people think Steve Kerr is whatever, one of the best 5 coaches in the league. He never was an assistant coach or a head coach before he got the Warriors job. He worked in the front office. He was the Suns GM with some success. His tenure was rocky, let's call it. Was a very good broadcaster. Was a broadcaster before being the GM of the Suns. Got pulled to that with no experience. And then after he left that, went back to broadcasting, went to the Warriors. Jason Kidd, who, I mean, has turned himself into a very good coach. I think he's doing a really good job with Dallas now. Had a rocky beginning, in both Brooklyn and Milwaukee. But he didn't have any experience. Steve Nash didn't have any experience. He didn't do that. He didn't do particularly well, or at least the guys that wanted him there initially ended up not wanting him there. So there is some pattern of success. It's the outlier. It's not common, but there are some success stories of coaches, becoming head coaches without having any NBA coaching experience before that. So, yeah, I mean, you'd love to have it. I think the other part, because you're talking about JJ, as it relates to JJ, is what are you giving up, right? Like, yeah, there are some other coaches that have some head coaching experience and certainly a lot of assistant coaching experience. But I think this is, and you talked about this with Jovan yesterday, how this is I don't want to say unique, but it's kind of an uncommon coaching search or coaching cycle, because other than Bud, there are not those names out there established with a lot of success, but obviously won a title, and usually there are those name coaches out there. It doesn't mean those coaches are necessarily better, but there are those guys where you go, oh yeah, that makes sense, right? Like, whatever you think of Bud as a coach, or Doc Rivers, who got hired in the middle of the year, like whatever you think of those guys as coaches, if a team hires them, you go I think Doc is bad, but you can go to he's had a lot of success, he's won a title. And now that Bud is off the table and Doc is off the table, those names don't exist out there. So I don't think, in comparing JJ to a standard crop, I think that is different than the situation that the Lakers or the rest of the NBA, whoever needs a coach, if they were interviewing him. I think it's a different question with JJ this time, because there isn't that name that your fans are going to go why didn't you hire him? He won a title.
Lou was available,
sure,
and they passed up on Lou for Redick, I'd be like, now that's a little tricky.
Yeah, or even let's go back to last year, right? So when Doc gets fired, so Doc is available, Frank Vogel's available. So when Phoenix, if they were to hire JJ last year, right, that's a different conversation, because then your fans are like, okay, yeah, but that dude just won a title a couple years ago with LeBron and AD. He probably seems like he might.
Did anybody see him that way? Honestly, though.
I mean, he won the title. He was.
I know, but I thought it was kind of weird how that was just
okay, but fine. But the Lakers hired him, and he had 2 coaching stops before, so it's not like this dude has never had the bona fides to get an NBA job. My point is, this situation is uncommon, right? Where the hottest names are JJ, and then some of the assistants that the Lakers are going to bring in and talk to. But there isn't that name out there, that star power name, that championship coach that for whatever reason, it kind of fizzled out wherever he previously was.
Among those assistants, there isn't a Luke Walton, there isn't a Brian Shaw when he was first coming off of working with Phil. I will say, with one caveat though, I will say that Micah Nori a week ago was kind of seen as that way for 2 reasons, because Minnesota lost 2 straight.
Right. Then Joker was like, who? Why are you guarding me? But it seemed like this genius plan, right? And the reasons are whatever they are for Minnesota being able to dominate Joker and Murray and the Nuggets in the first 2 games. But Micah Nori is the lead assistant there, was seen as largely responsible for that. But he was also very front facing, because unfortunately Chris Finch did the same thing to his knee that I did a little while back. And so it's kind of felt like Mike Inori is sort of the head coach, right? So I think until they lost those 3 games in the way that they lost those 3 games and looked kind of helpless, I would say that Mike Inori kind of had become that like hot assistant name.
Yeah, but like the fact that he's never played in the NBA, I think puts a bit of a ceiling on how hot a candidate,
Really?
he can be. Yeah,
I don't know.
I didn't
The
I
film room guys are the path of the film room
Oh, for
guy has.
sure. I'm not saying that like he won't be a really good head coach whenever he gets the
Oh, you're
opportunity.
saying
Like I
people
don't know.
just don't know the name because he
Yeah.
didn't play. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah. I think had he spent any time in the NBA, he would be the clear cut favorite, right? But for whatever reason, he's not seen that way. It's weird because in the NFL, that doesn't matter as much, right? Like, well, I guess I'm now getting old enough to where players I remember playing in the NFL are now becoming head coaches or becoming hot, coaching candidates and stuff like that, right? Like DeMarco Farr when he went from San Francisco to Houston was like the
Yeah.
big, popular ex-player. And I remember
Yeah, sure.
watching Farr play. I was like, wow, I feel so old that this guy. And like same thing goes for who's the
Yeah,
guy
plus
that
he was coming off, the 49ers were like the number 1 defense or number 2
yeah.
defense in the
Well,
league, and they were
who's
dominating.
the guy that the Patriots just hired? Is it a Mayo?
Oh, Jared Mayo, yeah. Yeah, Jerod
Yeah.
Mayo, yeah.
Like I remember like watching him play and
That
I'm
dude was
like,
a
man,
monster at Tennessee. He was a monster in college too.
yeah,
He was
I
a
mean, he was
bad
just
dude.
incredible player.
Yes.
I like it. I like my football coach to be able to kick most of my football team's
Just
ass.
scary.
I think it's an important quality. But yeah, less important in basketball, but for some reason I find that important in football. But anyway, I'm going to start extremely general and
Mhm.
then I'll kind of talk on some of the points that you made there. But first and foremost, when we're talking about like you've made this point a couple times in the past on the show and I think this is a really important point.
Oh, what did I say?
Generally
Yeah, what did I
speaking,
say?
generally speaking, we or teams in sports suck at hiring head coaches. And there's a variety of reasons
Basketball
for
teams,
it,
yes.
but like
I don't know the other leagues this intimately, but NBA teams generally suck at hiring head coaches, yes.
yeah. But I think the reason that is, especially in the NBA, because in football and in baseball, you have downtime in between plays, and there's a lot of time for the coach to actually coach. Whereas in basketball, and I think soccer is like this too, in basketball or football, for those of you who we have some international
Yeah.
folks tuned in, but for basketball, you do a lot of game coaching in practice. You do a lot of game coaching in film, and you have to implement all. This is where I thought Darvin lacked the most supremely was that lack of understanding or the poor communication on principles from coach to player in a general sense. A general understanding of how he wanted the Lakers to play basketball was absent. And that's why you saw like most teams are, all teams are going to be better on offense when they run sets. Every team is going to be better when it's an organized set and everybody knows if this happens, you do this, and this happens, you do that, and this happens, you do that.
I
And
would
you
say
have options A, B, and C.
I would say so I disagree. Well, maybe it's just a semantics thing, but I don't think teams are always better when they have sets. I think they are always better when they have principles,
Well,
meaning
no. I mean
like
that like
being able
when
that they can read to get like they can read the game together. So if this, then that, and everybody's on the same
yeah.
page.
Well, but what I mean though is that not teams in general, because you're right. Like that's what you see from the Nuggets. And this is actually my point, right? In that the Lakers didn't have team-wide principles. There was no under him. There was no, and even Vogel, like I thought they lacked it on offense. They got it on defense. They really understood it on defense. And unfortunately, by the time Vogel was fired, there just weren't enough defensive players to actually implement and
I have a theory
execute
about
those
that too, but
principles.
that's for another day.
But I think on what really bothered me watching the Lakers play offense under Darvin Ham was like, it'd be kind of a key possession, and it'd be Taurean Prince thinking it's his time to shine on the wing in ISO. It's like, it is never your time to shine on the wing on ISO. You're Taurean Prince. And I think
leave Taurean alone.
but I and this is where whoever it is, like that I was kind of searching for my point. The reason that it matters or why it's so difficult to hire a head coach in basketball is because a lot of those principles, those foundational principles, are implemented when we aren't watching, when we don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think the great head coaches, you watch the best coached teams in the NBA right now. I think Spoelstra is the best, and for my money, he's I think the best coach I've ever seen. Because I think it gets harder and harder and harder, and he keeps succeeding no matter how long he stays in the league. But I think Spoelstra is the best. And what's the thing that Heat fans never shut up about? Heat culture. And then you have, I think right now, Tom Thibodeau is doing about as good a job as anybody in the NBA. And that team has an almost religious understanding of what is expected of them. And
Devin
where
the Peacock is back. If for longtime listeners, Devin the Peacock is outside my window again.
There he is. Look at that. Way to go, Devin. We named him after Devin Booker.
Yes, we did. Was it last season? I think it was last season.
I forget. No, I think it
2
was
seasons
when the
ago?
Lakers were playing against the Suns. And then another, the Nuggets are another really well coached team where Malone has them, with the utmost understanding of where to be and what to do on both sides of the ball. And this is the thing that, maybe Micah Nori is able to hammer that home as a rookie head coach. Maybe David Adelman at 42 years old is able to hammer those things home with a team led by a 40-year-old LeBron James. Maybe, but we don't know. I legitimately don't know.
It's been difficult enough for me that everybody in the NBA is now younger than me. Coaches being younger than me maybe a step too far for me as I pick at my gray beard.
No, you know what got me in that regard? Joe Davis, the guy who calls Dodgers games, is younger than me. That, going from Vin Scully.
Yeah, because Vin was 192.
Vin Scully sounded like baseball. Right?
Yeah.
Vin Scully sounded like you would expect a baseball announcer from the 60s to sound, who's lasted all the way up until the point where he retired or whatever. Joe Davis, for one thing, is incredible at what he does. He does baseball, he does a World Series, he does football. I think he's on the second team on Fox's NFL stuff too. Incredible at what he does, and he's like a year or two younger than me. And when I found that out, it just
So a couple of things to not push back, just to respond to what you were saying is you mentioned the implementation of principles or sets or core identity kind of stuff in film sessions and in practice. And the one thing I would say is NBA teams don't practice. So by practice you mean preseason, you mean camp. Mm-hmm. And you talked about the Nuggets, always knowing what to do. Yeah, Michael Malone. I don't want him to yell at me. He is
Mike.
Okay. Mr. Malone.
Yeah.
He is, you're right. He is a really good coach.
He seemed okay with being called Lakers daddy. So I think he's okay with people going.
I know he was running that mouth after the series. And then after the title, it was a little weird. He was still talking about the Lakers after the title, but I think it's two things. I think he is a good coach, but Denver, the management in their wisdom, let him hang around. What is this, his 10th year, something like that, 9th or 10th year. So they let him hang around, or not let him hang around, but they kept him, through some ups and downs while they were building that culture or that identity. They also have the dude that's the best in the world by a ton, but their starting lineup is great. They traded for Aaron Gordon, 3 years ago, right? And KCP 2 years ago. But MPJ has been around forever. Jamal and Joker have been around forever. So yeah, it is about the coach hammering home those principles and core beliefs and how we play. But it's easier when it's been the same thing for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 8 years. It becomes much easier and it becomes second nature to the guys, which makes it easier to install counters to stuff, to install the when our principals aren't doing this or when somebody knows what we do. Well, here's how we're going to, because we read the game together and we all know, have that second sense or sixth sense rather of each other. It's much easier to install counters and install other stuff that you do or install more offense, install specialty, sideline out of bounds stuff. Like the best teams you'll see and the best coaches, their teams do well out of timeouts. They do well sideline out of bounds, a baseline. It's because they're good coaches. It's also generally because they have good players. But those things are usually, you're allowed to work on the finer details and install like creative new stuff when you have all the old stuff down. It's much easier. So I do think, in asking for, and Darvin saying, like
it's why
injuries,
Italian
and why continuity is
and
important.
Mexican, well, like recipes get better over time, right? Because like you learn your recipe from your mom or your dad or whatever, and they learned it from their parent, and they learned it from their parent, and they were like
if you're a good cook,
and you
right?
get to tweak it over time.
Yes,
and
if you're a good
and
cook, if you know what you're doing, yes.
Yeah. Now sometimes some people ruin recipes.
I was like, you made it worse. Ask Michael Irvin. We're losing recipes.
I'm so bummed we don't have an HD version of that clip. Like it's just like the only one that we have is grainy, and it's like I guess it kind of helps because it
was there HD
makes...
then? When is that from?
Maybe, I don't know. No, but it was like a Vine. Like it was recorded like from TV onto a phone.
Got it. Well, I'm sure it exists somewhere. I'm sure. Yes, I don't know how long ago. I don't remember how long.
It was on NFL TV or NFL. The NFL.
Oh, they definitely was. I mean, assuming it was in the last like 16, 17 years, then yeah, that's
they might be
HD
trying to wipe all of their Michael Irvin stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'll just leave it.
Yeah. But yeah, all right. So with this said, whoever gets hired, whether it's Adelman, Nori, Atkinson, Borrego,
Irwin,
yes, Zayas, like whoever gets hired is not going to have that advantage. Is not going to, they're going to be building fresh, and they are going to be building.
Yes.
They're going to be implementing those principles.
Yeah, they're going to be installing stuff new. Yes.
Yeah. With a team, by the way, that has like a 2-year shelf life potentially, right? With the reports out there that LeBron wants to play for 2 years, and then you see if there's a reset there. I don't know. I can't put my finger on how much JJ's lack of experience matters to me compared to other head coaches, and I think part of that is that the jury is kind of rigged here because of the experience that we just had with one of said experienced assistant coaches turned head coaches, right? Like I can't tell you, and we can go through Brian Shaw. I remember when the Lakers didn't hire Brian Shaw, how disappointed I was. And then he went to Denver and was rapping to his players. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, all right, I get why I can get why maybe his interview didn't go very well. And you can say the same thing about like Kurt Rambis, who was a really highly sought after assistant coach turning head coach. He was not very good when he was in Minnesota. Didn't have the best talent, but still wasn't particularly great there. Like my point here is that because you could find examples of coaches who succeed, like Jason Kidd, who weren't head coaches before.
There was no one way.
Yeah. And like, I think the part of this conversation surrounding the Lakers, and this is me, by the way, sounding like I'm paying bail or whatever for however the Lakers are going about doing this, or if, in my opinion, the likeliest outcome here is that JJ Redick is the next coach of the Lakers. But like, I find myself getting kind of annoyed at how definitively people are talking about who was the better candidate than others here, given like even if there was like unless it was Lou. If it was Lou, like if Lou was out there on the market right now and people were saying that like Lou is far and away the best candidate here, I'd be saying that too. And I would agree. But like right now, you have Atkinson, who was like okay at Brooklyn, and then Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and James Harden all said, we don't want you around here anymore. We want somebody that like we respect, right? He would probably run into the same issue, by the way, with LeBron James. You could say that like James Borrego is another guy who has head coaching experience. His head coaching experience was with the Charlotte Hornets, and they never mattered while he was there. And he also apparently lost the locker room. Which like if he loses a Charlotte Hornets locker room that doesn't have expectations, how's that going to go when he's trying to coach a Lakers locker room with LeBron and AD in it that does have title expectations and aspirations? Also, I can't stop thinking about Darvin Hamon. Like I can't get that nickname out of my head. So
what?
It's
Why do I agree to do this every week?
I can't. I made that joke off the air with Jovan a couple days ago when we recorded, and it hasn't been able to leave my head about James Borrego. And I'm like, I can't quite get my head around that. So I don't know. I maybe it's me coping in advance, right? What's the term from Succession? Pre-morning, right? Where the weirdo son.
Giving spoiler. Don't give any spoilers for a show that's been over with for a year and a half. And this that you're speaking of was 4 years ago. But yeah,
a character dies, and then they ask this guy, "Are you okay?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'll be fine." He's supposed to ask, or he's supposed to give like the speech at the funeral, and they're asking him, "Are you okay? Are you okay? You're okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I pre-mourned." It turns out he was not okay. He wasn't able to give the speech. No. And but like, so maybe this is me like pre-mourning or pre-coping with the Lakers, because I think the Redick hire is going to be the direction, just based off of like the way that the winds are blowing is how I'll put it. It looks like JJ is going to be the hire. Maybe this is me already coping with it, but I also think that like in basketball specifically, we don't know shit about leadership. We don't know shit about coaching.
I've been so in your your little soliloquy here.
That was a long one. My bad.
No. I've known what I was going to say next, and I was trying to think of a different way to say it, and I haven't come up with anything yet. So I'll just say it.
You want me to keep going?
No. And neither do the listeners.
I made a Darvin Hamon joke. It's time for me to stop talking.
All right, so I am fortunate enough, lucky enough, I don't know, good enough timing, talented enough, smart enough, I don't know, whatever it is, good enough with people that I'm very lucky to get to do what I do. And it's very important for me to tell fans, like not tell fans how to fan. And so I'm trying to think of a different way to say to fans, you have no idea what you're talking about. Because I don't want to say that. Because it sounds like, I don't know.
But I just said it.
Yeah, you don't have any idea what you're talking about. Fans
I don't even think the experts know what they're talking about on this.
But that's what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah.
I've just said earlier that, and you said it, but parroting back what I say is that NBA teams are bad at this.
Yeah.
And so, to your point about fans, like, why? Like, I don't care who gets hired. You are disappointed. Why? Like, you settled on whichever person you settled on. How? We don't know. Like, there are not good measurements that are accessible to fans and about like the success of coaches. Nobody that is a fan really like is logging this stuff or tracking this stuff. You don't have the ability to. There aren't the like tools for you to be able to if you even wanted to.
Teams it's don't kind of have like those defense tools.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like the teams, like we have a little bit more information than Joe Q fan on the street.
Yeah.
Yes, but like defense, the NBA hasn't, or basketball in general hasn't figured out really how to quantify defense. If we get time, we'll talk about Gobert in a little bit. We haven't been able to figure out how to measure defense. Coaching is behind that. We just like it's all guessing. Like fans, it's completely guessing. Teams, it's educated guessing. We have more information. Teams have more information than fans do, but like it's still kind of a guess. And so I would say to your point about, people saying definitively like, oh, I've settled on this guy, or this guy can't get the job or shouldn't get the job. Well, why? How did you settle on that? And there are going to be fans that, I don't care which candidate of all the candidates that are rumored candidates that you listed, and there are even a few others, every one of them, there are going to be people out there that are, say, person X is number one on my list, person Y is last on my list. And you will find that for all of the candidates. And my question is, how did you reach that conclusion? And so I would hope, and this is not realistic, but I would hope that fans would temper their frustration if their candidate doesn't get hired, or the last person on their list does get hired, because you don't know. We just don't know.
Well, what I
Like
would say,
at least we don't know. We don't know about draft picks either, right? You don't know. Like it's guessing, educated guessing.
you
but at
know a
least,
little bit more about
right?
draft
But at
picks than
least fans
coaches.
can watch like this guy play in
Yeah.
college or play in the G League,
Yeah.
and you can't do that with coaches. The fans don't have the mechanism to do so.
Yeah. So this is a comment here, and I know that this is going to go. I know where this is going, so I'm just going to get out ahead of it. D. Stevens says Cranges is a valuable resource. I know where this is going because I know that this all sounds like
he's put a list out there.
Yeah. This sounds like a subtweet. This entire conversation has sounded like a subtweet, but I swear to God,
No. I think Cranges is smart.
I agree that Cranges is. I love Cranges.
Yeah,
I loved him when he
smart.
comes on this show. Like some of my favorite episodes on here are him and me just talking basketball. I love the guy.
He does. I mean, I don't really know him, but from what I have gathered, he does care about the Lakers. He is a Lakers fan.
Mhm.
But I am not. When I'm saying fans, I'm not speaking about him, even in part,
Yeah.
because if there is, he's just not like he is literally doing as much as anybody can do to track these sorts of things. Does that mean his conclusions are correct? Not necessarily.
Well, all right.
But
So
he is at least doing the work to he has a methodology for all of this stuff. It may not be right, but he has a methodology, and this is somebody who has also worked at least as a consultant for college teams and NBA teams. So I'm not putting him in the fan bucket. I did see on Twitter, I don't know, a week ago or so or a few days ago, that he had highlighted some of his most favored choices and his least favorite choices of the rumored candidates. So I did see that. This is not about him at all.
I also have my favorite and least favorite and all that stuff. And here's all right. So you asked how do we arrive at how do we put together, how do we compute the data, and fart out a preferred list on the other side of that data. For me personally, I think that like one area where I've been really frustrated watching from afar and knowing what I've been able to gather on the workings of this relationship here between the Lakers and LeBron is that essentially for a couple / few years they were working really, 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 really well together, and then the Russ trade happened. And since then, it's been a lot of finger pointing as to who was more responsible for the Russell Westbrook trade. And I think slightly before that, you had like Tyronn Lue not getting hired, and that kind of was, the way that all played out was kind of a weird spot for LeBron's camp or whatever. But the biggest like fork in the road moment was LeBron was the Russell Westbrook trade and the fallout from the Russell Westbrook trade. And ever since then, I don't think that the Lakers and LeBron have been working at the same level together since. And JJ Redick to me would kind of symbolize that they are now kind of working together a little bit more. And I just the NBA and professional sports are so competitive and now so smart that if not every member of your organization is rowing in the same direction, pulling in the same direction, you are going to fall behind. You are inherently at a disadvantage to those organizations who are more closely rowing in that same direction. And that's not to say that there's a unanimity in other organizations and the Lakers are a mess. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is that, like, the reason that I am interested in JJ Redick is that I know that he and LeBron would be starting off at a better place than Vogel and LeBron were, and then Darvin and LeBron were.
So I don't even think yes, sure, but I don't really even think that's relevant. What I think is relevant, I'm not going to say who it was. Somebody asked me or put on Twitter something like, basically, what would JJ Redick like? JJ Redick doesn't have experience. He's never been an assistant. He's never even been a head coach in college, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, what could possibly JJ Redick have over the other candidates? LeBron? There's my answer, right? Like, so I don't know. Hi, Devin. I don't know how relevant it is that theoretically JJ would have more buy-in walking in the door than Vogel or Darvin or Luke. I don't even know if that's relevant. What is relevant is because JJ is not going up against in trying to figure out who is the right person now. JJ is not going up against those guys to be hired for the job. JJ is going up against
guys who also wouldn't have buy-in.
So
I don't think
my point is what's
would have
relevant
buy-in. David Adelman, I don't think would have buy-in.
My point is that is what is relevant is if you are a proponent of hiring JJ, that I think it is fair to presume that he would have more buy-in day one than the other. Save for one, possibly would have more buy-in or as much buy-in. JJ would have more buy-in than all of the other candidates, save for one. And since those are the guys theoretically that JJ is going up against, if you are a proponent of hiring JJ, I think that is one thing that you can look to. I don't know
the thing that I'm looking to. Like, that is the reason. And look,
and still that's an assumption we're making, but that is at least a concrete assumption, right? That is something that you can say, oh, this is why I think it should be him. Or you could say, this is why I don't think it should be. That's like saying he doesn't have experience, right? Like, I don't think it should be him because he doesn't have experience. Experience matters. Okay, fine. Yeah. But that is at least, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And look, I think, I guess the point of this entire conversation here, and I think, honestly, if we boil down like why coaching or hiring a coach is, not scientific, is what it comes down to is like how people are going to respond to a person. Like, that's the, again, in basketball, it's this very fluid sport. It's this very dynamic sport. And getting buy-in, I think, matters a lot more in basketball than it matters in football, than it matters in baseball, right? In football players have no choice but to buy into what the coach is selling, because those contracts are not guaranteed. And if the coach doesn't think that he has buy-in from that player, that dude is going to be gone. Like, one way or another, that guy's going to be traded for a fake 7th round pick, or that player is going to be, traded for or waived outright, and their career is now in flux. In baseball, the sport moves so small, and there's such a long list of positional coaches that, like, if you're not really thrilled with what a manager does, you can just spend enough time away from the manager. In basketball, the locker room is small. In basketball, those timeouts, are those huddles
much
are
fewer people
really
too
small,
on a team.
and it's really obvious when you're not paying attention to the coach in one of said huddles, right? That's why all of those clips went so viral this year.
You never
watching the
in
Lakers
football
on
and
the
baseball,
sideline.
you never see. I mean, other than like, this isn't the whole team, right? But you never see like really an interaction with multiple members or the whole team like on TV. And in basketball, every time out, you're watching the huddle, right? In football, whatever. Once the defense comes off the field, the defensive line goes with their coach, and the DBs go to talk to their guy and see stuff. It's never just, and it's just not. That's not like logistically even like feasible because there's 53 guys on an NFL team.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier, the NFL is more like college football.
Military.
Yeah, fine. That's a good analogy too. Like it's more like college football though. The transfer portal and NIL has changed it a little bit, but to your point, without guaranteed contracts, like NFL, if you don't get buy-in from the coach, if you are not bought into the coach and the GM or the organization or whatever, the coach will be like, get this dude up out of here. Mm-hmm. Like, and you just go away, right? It like in college football, you better listen to the coach and do what he says, or you're not playing, or you lose your scholarship, right? Like, so
yeah, right.
Yes, it's like that.
All right, last point on here before we move on and talk about Rudy Gobert really quickly.
Yeah.
But Yoshi
right,
is saying, I want the guy that has the experience of beating us 11 out of 12 times. Technically, it's 12 out of 13. 1, 2. When that guy, because that comment is about David Adelman, when that guy gets to the Lakers, he won't have Nikola Jokic anymore. So, like, all of that experience is going to be under
or Michael Malone.
Yeah, right. Or Michael Malone or Jamal Murray, or like you talked about, the built-in advantage of a core that has been playing together for like 6-7 years now. Like KCP is the new guy in that starting five, and he's been there like 2-3 years now.
Yeah, is this third season starting?
Yeah. All right. So let's we'll do the Gobert thing really quickly, and I'll just let you respond to my take.
You good. I'm all right.
You mentioned earlier about defense and how little we know about defense and how our metrics tend to be bad on defense, right? And I think a lot of the people who are like really, really loud about, coming to the aid of Rudy Gobert are analytic forward people. And this isn't like, you guys know me. I don't hate analytics. They're just information. It's just math. I happen to be pretty good at math. I don't have a problem with analytics. I have a problem with people who think that analytics are beyond question. And on defense, especially, I don't think we can define defense, analytically or statistically what we're watching there. I think we do a really poor job of doing that. So when people cite defensive metrics to say that Rudy Gobert is this great defender and hand over Defensive Player of the Year award after Defensive Player of the Year award after Defensive Player of the Year award after Defensive Player of the Year award, he's won the thing 4 times, and continue to cite those same metrics, it makes me say, well, maybe we should start like working on better metrics, because at one point he struggled guarding guards and that got him out of the playoffs. Now he's struggling guarding a certain big and that's getting him out of the playoffs. And like at other times it's like, well, he doesn't handle space all that well. And now it's like, well, sometimes it's like his players aren't that good. Now he has good players and his team is still giving up 140 points per 100 possessions or whatever the number is that the Nuggets are scoring at. And yes, I think more energy should be spent on saying that Denver and Jokic specifically is just special. That's perfectly fine. I think he'll probably wind up being like a top 2 or 3, maybe even 1 offensive weapon in the history of the sport, with his combination of physical, like how physical he is, how smart he is, the fact he can shoot, like all of these things make him a very special offensive player. Mm-hmm. But like the problem that I have with the conversation about Gobert right now is it always falls back to those defensive metrics. And I think everybody who even have made those defensive metrics would say that we don't know enough about defense to really hold these things as as dogmatically as some people do. And like, I don't know, I'm sick of watching the guy be called the best defensive player in the league, and then every postseason get proven that, okay, he's really good in the regular season, and it's a regular season award. And yeah, that's fine also. However, those regular season awards, they help tell the story of, the NBA. And so like when we say, all right, he is the best defensive player, like when you win 4 of those things, you are now the best defensive player maybe ever. It's like you and Dikembe, and like I don't even know who else would be in that conversation. I don't think he belongs there.
Yeah, so there's a lot of nuance here. Everything that you said about defensive matrices is correct. A lot of the reason we don't have defense, and maybe we can't quantify defense, maybe we will never be able to, is because, but I kind of flippantly, and I sort of regret it, but I kind of flippantly said, like, you don't know what you're talking about, not you, just like fans don't know what you're talking about as it relates to coaches. Even the people that are creating all of these defensive matrices or metrics, I don't know what the correct way to say it is.
I think it's just metrics.
Okay. They don't know what they're talking about. The reason they don't know what they're talking about is because they don't know what is being asked of a player in whatever scheme they're in whatever, whatever the coverage is. You just like don't know. Some people are being asked to do things that are not going to get them steals and blocks. They're not going to get them rebounds. Some guys are there, like some people are there like to double in certain situations, or you should come up to this level of screen. We don't know if you can or can't because you're never asked to, these kind of things. And so there isn't, look, Rudy Gobert is a good, probably very good, maybe great defensive player. He is not the best defensive player in the world. He also never has been. But he was far and away the best defensive player on far and away the best defensive team this year. So I don't really have a problem with him winning it. Do I think I don't even think he's a top 10 defensive player in the league. And the reason for that is, and this goes to the what is asked of you in the scheme thing, which is problematic for measuring defense, is in the way that the NBA is now, in my opinion, you simply cannot be the best defensive player in the world when you lack the versatility that he lacks. He's better at it. He's better dancing in space.
He's gotten better.
He's better, getting out on guards. He's better at it than he used to be. But he's nowhere near as good as Draymond. He's nowhere near as good as Bam. He's nowhere near as good as AD. Right. And so those guys that can all, Jonathan Isaac, although he doesn't play enough, Triple J, although he shouldn't have won it last year, but that's a different thing. But so if there is something that makes you incapable or diminishes your value greatly, you can't be the best, right? Like it's the reason why Alex Caruso can't be the best defensive player on earth, right? It's Drew Holiday, although Drew guards up pretty damn well, but Patrick Beverly, who won defense, or not, Marcus Smart, who won defensive player of the year 2 years ago.
Yep, 2.
Not possible. Because those guys cannot fight Nikola Jokic as well as Draymond or AD can fight Steph or Ja Morant or Dame. And so he just can't. Like Gobert just can't. He has physical limitations and he just can't. And so his lack of versatility in an era that is defined by 3-point shooting and versatility, basically, like positionless basketball. No, he's just not the best defensive player in the world. I understand why he wins the award. Like MVP is for who had the best regular season, right? I think Joker should have won it last year. I think he should have won it this year. I think he should have won it 4 times in a row. I wasn't certain he was the best player in the world until last year, though, right? So winning the award doesn't necessarily mean that he's the best player, a best defensive player. A lot of people equate the two, and you're right. It does tell the story. The reason it matters is because, to your point, it tells the story of
Like,
the NBA, and he's going to go to the Hall of Fame because
imagine,
he's won 4 Defensive Player of the Years.
the way that Jen watches basketball basically is if I'm watching basketball, she kind of like looks onto the second screen and goes like, oh, what's going on over there? And then like goes back to whatever she's watching on the main screen, and especially in the playoffs. And then sometimes the playoff game is good enough that like I'm like, hey, do you mind if I move this over to the main screen? This is really good. I want to hear the audio, blah, blah, blah.
Sounds like you're at a strip club. Like, please welcome to the main screen, Lakers, Wolves,
Thunder.
Like, you go to different strip clubs than I do, but
so James Harden's like, oh shit, now I'll watch film now.
Please welcome to
that was unfair, but I'm proud of it.
But now the defunct NBA All-Star Draft.
So
make sure to tip Ernie and Chuck.
But like Jen basically will watch, she'll watch a game and she'll see a player that is doing something or that she likes or something, and she's like, okay, tell me about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I'll tell her about whoever it is. Right. And one of those things that I'll say sometimes, like, all right, this guy, like she'll ask about Jokic. She loves Jokic. She's like, how is that like
a pudgy white boy?
What?
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, he
looks like my husband.
He's the best. I know. He's the best player in the world. And she's like, why can't you be the best player in the world? Like,
that's funny.
Like
I was having this conversation with somebody who probably likes basketball less than your wife yesterday, or a couple days ago. Was it yesterday? When was Mavs Thunder? Last night. So she's like, "Is that the pudgy white dude?" And I was like, "That's the best player in the world." I'm like, "No, that's the pudgy white dude. That's
different
like
pudgy white dude
in the world." But they look like twins. I'm like, kind of.
They actually get along really, really well.
Yeah,
but like, friends, yeah. But so like one thing that I'll sometimes like with Jokic, right? I'll say like, yeah, this guy's going to win MVP, and she'll like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then she'll, because she knows what the awards are, right? She'll say 6 Man of the Year, and like we were watching Nasrid, I was like, yeah, that guy's going to win. I think he already won it. 6 Man of the Year.
Yes.
And then I'll say like that guy right there is the defensive player of the year, and she'll be like, the guy that can't guard
the dude getting cooked.
Guy?
Yeah, the dude
like the guy that he and I'll be like, yeah, and the number of times that has happened with Gobert specifically over the years is just like it's staggering. Honestly,
so in his defense, in Gobert's defense, he doesn't win these awards for his one-on-one defense.
I know
he wins it because he's the back line of everything, and he keeps it all together, and he helps everybody else out. And in his defense, I don't even think he was particularly bad, whatever, in game 5. Joker's just
my one take. I keep seeing that
Joker
possession.
Joker. I mean, all those dudes that I just said that I thought were bigs that were better or even significantly better. They were getting their ass kicked too. Like I saw the thing. Like AD is. I think Draymond is probably the best in the world still. Draymond gets his ass kicked by Joker, right? I mean, statistically, Draymond is definitely the best one-on-one guy, even though there was the thing that came out about old friend Zoo, who had some staggering points per possession allowed on ISOs and post-ups against Joker. But, like AD can do everything. Joker kicks his ass. Like, he gets Draymond, he gets everybody. That's Joker.
Why don't I see enough teams full fronting Jokic? Like with every other guard, like
you're bringing up Thunder. Now you want full frontals? Get it together.
James Harden has never loved a podcast more. But no, I don't get it. Like I don't understand. Like I just don't. Like with Gobert. Again, I understand it's a regular season award. And again, I understand that like what happens to him in the playoffs doesn't matter as it pertains to that award.
Mm-hmm.
But
It can
like
matter
the
for the
NBA
next. It can matter
already
for the
has a
next
bad
season,
enough
though.
problem with its players basically telling us time and time and time and time again that the regular season doesn't matter all that much. And now that these awards are becoming kind of farcical too, now it's like, you know, when more people are tuned in to the playoffs and now they're watching the supposed defensive player of the year, now the 4-time defensive player of the year, get cooked every year in said playoffs, it just becomes more apparent that the regular season doesn't matter.
Yes, but I don't know that it's fair to call the award farcical. Like, again, I don't think he's the best player. I don't think he's the best defensive player in the world by a pretty good margin. I've mentioned a bunch of names that I think are better than him. But
Also, why can't wings win? Like, why did we decide that wings can't win?
well, only bigs can win, except for Marcus Smart, because he talks a lot and has a reputation as a really good
Played in
defensive player
Boston
and got a bunch of steals.
and played in Boston.
There's actually kind of a revolution happening statistically in the NBA where we have started to, I think, properly contextualize how important steals are. And it used to be thought of as just somebody that people kind of threw out
Gambled.
steals as a measure of defense because it was just gambling. Steals are incredibly important. Like Shea led the NBA in steals this year. He's been, I'm going to be generous and call him mediocre defensively. His reputation has been mediocre. And he had a very good defensive season, in part because he led the league in steals. So wings can't win because it's a award about blocks, basically. And to be fair, there is plenty of research that has shown kind of definitively that bigs impact defense far more than guys that are farther away from the basket. But to my earlier point about versatility, like there's some wings that, Kawhi can fight. He can get out on the perimeter and dance, and he can fight bigger guys. PG is a little light to do that, but he's 6'10" and can also kind of. But it's just like a big man, or kind of like in the NFL, like the MVP is just like the quarterback award.
Yeah.
So we have decided that bigs are just more valuable defensively than smaller guys, and quarterbacks are the most valuable position on the field. So unless it's something outlandish or wrong, like Marcus Smart, just centers are going to win that, and quarterbacks are going to win MVP in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I honestly think it's like how we have arrived at Gobert winning 4 of them when and that kind of misrepresentation of how defense is played is like the starting point of that. Like, that meme where it's like a tiny little domino and then it like gets to a giant ass domino.
No, but I get it.
Well,
I think I get it. Whether you tip them over in one, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, but I get it. Yeah.
And so, like, I think, somewhere along the line, we decided only bigs are going to win this thing. And, like, I think part of the reason that we decided that is because bigs stopped being considered for MVP and, like, and like, stopped being considered for, like, the best player of all time conversations, too. For some reason, Kareem just never gets brought up. And like, I think like that small decision has now led to a point now where Rudy Gobert is seen as this, otherworldly defender in, just by resume sake. And I just have a problem with that because the stuff that wings have to do on a nightly basis where, like Jaden McDaniels on his own team is asked to size down and guard Jamal Murray. And then is also asked on, depending on who the matchup is, to size up and guard Kevin Durant. Like, that's insane. Draymond Green, right, for a long time, guarding 1 through 5. And sometimes it would be John Morant who we would take out of a series. And other times he would really give AD problems. And like like when you talk about like the stuff that Rudy Gobert, like he ain't like the most annoying conversation or talking point that I keep on hearing is, well, he's the best defensive player on the best team. It's like, well, okay, but like, would he be seen the same like if he was a Laker, like, and he had to make up for D'Angelo Russell and
right.
Austin
This is why I'm
Reeves?
saying like the scheme of it matters, and what you're being asked to do really matters as we try to measure defense. I again, like, maybe you could make an argument he's the third best defensive player of whatever, this generation or era or whatever. I don't think he's the third best defensive player now. But I do think that this is going to be looked back on, by history as kind of like, the fact that he has 4 now and his contemporaries, AD and Draymond, I believe, have 1 combined. I think Draymond has 1 and AD has none.
It's like Nash having 2.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think it's going to be looked
one.
back on by like Kobe and Shaq each having 1. You're like, wait, why did Nash get that? Like, what?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be looked back on like, that was kind of weird. Did we get that wrong?
Yep. All right. I know you probably have to go, so you can peace out if you want. I do have a couple super comments here that I need to get to.
I'll rock with you. Go ahead.
All right.
Well, let me check.
First and foremost, we have to we have to get the most important sound of the show in. The first question here comes from Rye Guy, who asks, is it Mitchell or Garland? LOL if Garland.
As I said, I have to go.
Not worth all the assets. No Lou extension as well. Number 17 looks like it'll be Bronny. I would be pretty surprised still if the Lakers used their pick at all, and even further if they used it on Bronny. I did laugh at the leak from Danny Ainge saying that he is considering taking Bronny at 32. So as to maybe scare the Lakers into giving him some stuff. But
I don't know that it's also the Lakers specifically. It could be anybody though, because that's the second pick of the first round.
Mostly the Lakers, right?
I mean, like it's gonna, he has no love lost for the Lakers. Yeah. That's fair.
Well, but like also because the Lakers have LeBron, and that like he's gonna try to take advantage of the Lakers' desire to kind of do right by LeBron. And if LeBron wants Bronny in the organization, then maybe the Lakers do some stuff to
or he's trying to send a message to all 28 if you exclude the Lakers, other teams in the league that may have some designs on wanting Bronny for whatever it means, if it's just because he's the hot name or because they might want to see what that means down the road for any interest from LeBron.
But yeah, is it Mitchell or Garland? Obviously, I would much prefer Mitchell. Garland is tough, man. Like he has a really bad contract and he was terrible in these playoffs, like bad. And I don't know if I want that on my books for the next 3 or 4 years, when there's really not much difference between him and D'Angelo Russell.
This has nothing to do with any Lakers interest or trades. I think that Donovan Mitchell is pretty clearly a better basketball player than Garland, and because Garland makes a ton of money, their contract, I mean, Donovan's going to make more, but not so much more that it's the differentiating factor.
The only reason I would be interested in Garland is if his contract has now reached a point where it takes assets to move off of him, then okay. But I don't think it's there yet. He's young enough to where like teams are going to think that he can bounce back or whatever, and they're going to give up stuff to get Garland. And I just don't know if I want to give up stuff to get Garland on that deal.
Well, yeah, I mean, similarly to D'Lo, as D'Lo was getting moved around, a few years back, they can point to that one All-Star, right? Like Garland, he was bad this year, but he was also hurt a lot. But he was not good this year. But he was an All-Star, I think it was 2021. He was an All-Star. So that was kind of similar to when D'Lo went, from Brooklyn to the Warriors to Minnesota to the Lakers. D'Lo at the beginning of all that had been an All-Star a couple of years before that, the one-time All-Star in the East.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think
as an injury replacement.
Were you an All-Star in the East? I forget.
I was yes, I got voted. I didn't have a good year, but I got voted. But no, it was a really thin year for guards in the East that year. I got voted.
The Lou extension, man, it's super weird. It's one thing that we haven't gotten an extension to this point. It's another thing entirely, and it really says something to how media works, that it does not get talked about at all, that there is zero extension talk between the Clippers and Lou right now. Like it's just sitting there.
Well, you don't know that there's no talks.
Well,
You know
no,
that
no,
there's
but
no
I'm not
extension
saying that
announced.
there's no talks or whatever, but I'm saying, but there's been no progress. Like, I don't know, like, we don't know anything about that. We don't know
Mhm.
anything at all. And I'm
Yep.
saying that, like, I think there's a lot of favors going on there that, the Clippers are saying, like, hey, like, we'd really appreciate it if you didn't mention the fact that there is no, like, Tyronn Lue extension. And we're now 2 or 3 weeks removed from our season ending short yet again, and it's just not happening. It hasn't happened to this point. I think it's super weird. I
Okay.
don't know why we aren't talking about this more.
Well, you know what? I'm staying away from it. Yes, sure. Weird. I don't.
Um,
Yeah, sure.
we have one more very, very, very important super comment
All right.
here that says just F Boston. And you know what, John? John gets the show. That is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. And I think this week's episodes of the Lakers Lounge podcast, yeah, unless something, really, really big happens, the plan right now is to call this the weekend or the end of the work week and head on off into the sunset that is this weekend. But you never know. We are that time of year where stuff can happen at a moment's notice, and we will react whenever we need to. So until the next time you guys hear from us, I'm Anthony Irwin. That was Aaron Larsoul. This has been the Lakers Lounge. Everybody have a great rest of your weekend. Make somebody else's, and we will talk to you on Monday or whenever we do. Who knows?